Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, here with Coach Kenny Simpson. Coach, it is playoff football time for you and your Southerners. It sounds like you had a good Friday, a little bit better than mine.
Yeah, anytime you can, we were playing for the 2 seed, playing a team that is going to host a playoff game. I think a good team, and we played really, really well. I thought in all 3 phases. It's been a minute. We've been challenging our kids to try to be clean, across the board, and so we're able to come away with a big win. We ended up winning 47-14 against a team I think is pretty good, and so when you can do that, it's always a good deal. We finished the regular season. Check this, Dane. We finished the regular season plus 30 in the turnover margin. So you guys that want to know how you win games when maybe you don't have dominant athletes, you create 34 turnovers, and you only give it away 4 times all season.
That's good.
To have a good chance to win a lot of games. Friday night's game, we won the turnover margin 7-0. So if you do that, you're probably going to win. It takes a game that should be even and obviously puts it in your favor. Of course, our kids played phenomenal. Our DBs had 4 picks. I think we had forced three fumbles. Yardage-wise, I think we were about even. I think they had 400 some odd yards, and we had maybe 400 or 500 yards. But turnover margin and special teams make a big, big difference.
Yeah, special teams. You hear people talk about the hidden yardage and you've got to go. We watched our punt returner, and it's really no fault of his own. It's kind of what we've coached him to do because we're afraid to turn the ball over. But he watched a lot of footballs hit the dirt and roll, and when they hit the dirt, and that punter was good, and he had them rolling 25 yards. Right. So every time you Peter get away from it, you're giving them 25 yards. So that's one of those things we have to coach that confidence next year. And that same kid to be confident, go get that ball. And we have to have confidence in ourselves and just letting the kid go get it. But, we at one point this season, I think we were around week 4 or 5, and we were averaging 3 defensive turnovers a game. And I was like, that's wild. It's wild that we're getting an additional 3. And I don't know what the numbers played out down the road. But that's big time, and if you can keep your offense clean, it's hard to win a game when you are 3 less possessions, essentially, right? You have 3 less scoring opportunities. That's hard to win.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 statistics that they show at every NFL game, and it's been proven time and time again. You win the turnover battle, you got an 80% chance of winning the game. Then you can win the special teams battle with a blocked punt or a long return or whatever that might be. You start at your own 20, your odds of scoring go up 10% every 10 yards you gain. We made the team we played start inside their own 20 as an average. So, you can have 400 yards of offense. You got to go 80 to score.
Yeah.
On the other end of it for us, I think we started around the 50-yard line. When you're doing that, it's easy to call offense when you got 4 downs to get 10 yards.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. We were not so successful on Friday night. Took a loss. It was a win and get in for both of us, for both teams that Friday night. So, unfortunately, our season does come to an end. You got to give kudos to the Longhorns from Lone Grove. That is my alma mater. So that was a little tough. Last year we went down there and beat them, and then in the first round of the playoffs, I got to travel down and beat our old rival, which was Plainview. So last year was a good year for me as a coach. Unfortunately, my nephews were on that Plainview team, so I ended their one of them I ended his football career. He was a senior, so that was his last game ever. And then the other one's a little bit younger, so he still gets to keep playing. But this year, Lone Grove came up and did it to us. So it's just kind of how it goes sometimes. It was a hard-fought battle. In NFL, I feel like you see a bunch of last-second field goal wins. It seems like every week, 70% of the games are like who goes down and kicks it to win. I don't know if I've ever seen that in high school. So for them to drive the field and kick a field goal to beat us was was big time. For a coach to have the confidence in his kicker, I don't know that we had that confidence. I think we'd have gone for it. Like we've struggled with the field goal this year, so yeah, man, kudos to him for having the game plan, and they went down and got the thing done. So the Longhorns go on. They go in as like a 2 seed, I believe, and we're collecting jerseys. So it's kind of a tough one, but yeah. We want to talk today about kind of building belief in your team. And so, really that whatever your thing is, if you do it during the off season, how you build that resiliency, and then moving into season. And Coach, I know you got a lot of great talking points. Before we do that, though, let's get into the quote of the week.
Yeah. So quote of the week for my guys in Oklahoma, we're going with Bob Stoops, who I do think is one of the better coaches. I've really enjoyed watching him coach, and even in was it XFL or whatever he was coaching recently, he did a good job in that. So
yeah, I think he's still the Arlington guy, I think.
That's what it is, yeah. So it's been fun to watch. I love how they mic those guys up and you can actually hear them, But anyway, quote of the week from Bob Stoops says, "In coaching, I found that gratitude is a powerful motivator. When players are thankful for what they have, they play with more heart, they play with more passion, and they play with more respect for the game." And I think that's the challenge. And that's the challenge for every coach, especially in today's world, is to get players to be unselfish and grateful for the opportunity to play, and get coaches to be the same way. That's a challenge because we kind of live in a selfish society, and it's pushed individual awards on these kids since they were little. So if you can figure out a way to get them all to come together for the collective and play for each other, then you're going to have a much, much better chance of accomplishing what we're going to talk about today. Like that's, to me, number one thing you got to get them to accomplish. And you're never going to be perfect. Like nobody is perfect in that world. But if you can get them to at least give up a little bit of their own individualism to help the team, you got a chance to be successful.
I love that. I love that quote, and it really comes back to like relationships for me, right? We've talked about that for almost 3 years now. We've almost been doing this for 3 years. Just kind of that relationships over everything, and you've got to go out and build those relationships with kids, and this is part of it, right? They will. You can instill things like gratitude and belief and all the stuff we're going to talk about today. So that's a good one. Coach Stoops, of course, good coach. Real quick, man, we'll jump into our ads. If you don't mind, can you share some other ways a coach can make things simple for his staff and athletes? All right, guys, you're watching live. This is where we're going to go in and clip some stuff for the released episode. Wings and Things, December 12, 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 7.0 and then your clinics. All right, let's do it. All right, appreciate that, Coach. Guys, thank you so much for listening to those ads and reaching out to those guys. If you haven't talked to Mark and them over at Ace Sports, you're really missing out. You're kind of hurting yourself. It's just the limitation is you just calling, set up a meeting with him and your administration. You can even just talk to him by yourself for a little while if you need to kind of get an understanding. Just understand it is a cheat code for fundraising. We're going to go out and get you a great board, a great video board, replaces an old scoreboard, updates a new stadium, and then just the influx of the monies once you learn how to run that ad revenue is what's really going to set your program apart. The 7.0 book is out, Gun T 7.0. And that's all the new stuff you did this year, right, Kenny?
Yeah, we added a couple things in that book. I had guys asking me about like how we used our pods in practice. So we went a little more in depth in the book about how we've modified those and what we've done with those. And then I, of course, have new formations that we use this year. And we have a very good quarterback this year. So we were able to do a little bit more in the passing game. So that's added in. Every year we usually have a new wrinkle on an RPO or two. And so we added that in. And then we've had a couple different run game things we've modified, how we've done a few things. So all the updates are in there. And then I think what guys really will enjoy is we went a lot more in depth in our pods. So if you're a guy in here, hey, we like how you practice it. We'd like to get a little more on how you work your practice to fit your offense. There's a big section in there that'll help them. Yeah.
The books are always really neat. I love to just kind of go back still through. I think I've got 1 through 5 or 6. I think I picked up 6 last year at the clinic, but it's neat to see that you can continue adding on. So if I am a complete package, I have the whole program. This is just kind of that next wrinkle to help. You don't have to run it exactly how Kenny does, but it does help kind of spark that creative juices, right? What else can we do within this system and keep running buck and belly and throwing some RPOs? So great stuff, man. Talk to me about these clinics. I know you've got a bunch of them this year. The first one's coming up early January, AFCA day, AFCA, the right before those days.
Yeah, Charlotte. We're going to do one in Charlotte right before AFCA's in January. We have one for you guys that want to get warm. San Diego coming up after that one. Excited about that one. I really love San Diego area. So if you're a guy who lives out there in the Southwest, or you're a guy that just wants to take a cheap flight to San Diego and get out of the cold, we're doing a clinic there in January. We have one in Sacramento as well. So West Coast guys, those are kind of your options. Sacramento, San Diego, Batesville. The national clinic is already starting to fill up. I think I've got 5 different states already that have registered, and it's early. So that one's going to be a full one. It always is. That one I think is in early February. Then we have one in the Midwest. I wait till it gets a little warmer. So we go up there to Milwaukee, and we go up there to, we're going to Minneapolis this year, kind of that area. Going to be in April on those. Of course, we're going to Boston again, which is one of my favorite cities to visit. I think I'm probably missing one too, but several clinics available. Oh, we're going down to Houston. So Houston area. If you're interested in going to that one, that's going to be in February also. So several opportunities. I try to pick sites that either you could drive to or they're cheap airports. Houston's easy to fly into.
Yeah.
San Diego's easy to fly into. Milwaukee's easy to fly into. Boston. So easy places to go. It's going to be a lot of fun. We do cap these. Last year, I kind of made an exception to a few rules and let guys in late. But I really don't like going over 100 guys at these clinics because they're not meant to be your normal clinic. They're meant to be everybody can talk, everybody can be together, a learning experience. Of course, we're doing player demo at all of them, which is probably the best part. And then I am working to secure. I try to have 2 options. So guys that have heard me now for 4 or 5 years, there'll be other options potentially available at each site.
That's awesome. I don't know militarily if I will have the availability. I think we're going to be pretty busy over the next 8 months or so. So I'm still going to try to get to Boston. Hopefully it falls within a little window where I have some free time. That's my favorite city. So, getting to go up and do the gun tea clinic or whatever would be pretty. It's a great way to get there, if nothing else. Sweet. Let's see. We talked about gun tea. We talked about
wings and things.
Yeah. Wings and things. December 12th and 13th. Tell me about that, Coach.
So we moved it up. Rick Stewart and I put this on. We've been doing it now for 5 or 6 years. Did it during COVID, so I guess it'd be 6 years now. Basically, it's an online clinic. So guys that we can't go to a clinic in person. You get the recordings of it. Everyone's done through kind of Zoom. We did it during COVID first, and a lot of guys really liked it. So we've just kept doing it that way. So it'll be all versions of wing offenses. So I'm kind of responsible for getting the gun tee, hybrid wing tee, modern wing tee guys. Rick usually sticks with traditional wing tee, double wing, single wing, and anything that involves a wing. We try to get those guys to come do a couple sessions. Usually the guys will do 2 or 3 sessions. Best part about the clinic, you can sit at home. You get to watch it at home, and most guys buy the recordings. That way you can watch it whenever you want to watch it.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, really good clinic. We'll probably start marketing for that or putting out once we're gathering speakers now. So we'll probably put the information out in the next week or 2. But it'll be one of those deals where every time I go on and listen to those guys, and we don't even run single wing, but those guys are really, really good at what they do and kind of give you ideas. So that'll be December 12th and 13th, details to come.
Perfect. All right, man, let's jump into it then here. The 10-0 to 0-10 to 10-0. That book, I know we've been selling it for a little while, but I still think it's a great way to get in, and it's still pretty new.
That'll come out probably December. My wife and I are kind of in the middle of a move right now, so putting one book out, she's probably already going to be mad at me because she has to mail these things, and it's a process. So I'm probably going to wait till, I would imagine, Christmas time to put that book out. It is done. I think it's going to be a really good book. It was basically based off of in 2014 we went 0-10, and then 2024 we went 10-0. And what did we do in between there to get to that point? And so the book kind of goes through 10 different lessons of things that we did that worked, that helped us get from 0-10 to 10-0.
Love it. All righty, Coach. Well, let's jump into part one here. So we're talking today about kind of building that belief. There's times you get into a game where something bad happens, and I think successful teams go, that's fine. The other side gets to go play football now. To where, if you don't have that culture, that winning mindset, that belief in your team, you kind of get the hanging heads and man, that's the end. That's the last piece. That's the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. So we're going to talk today about building that mindset. So part one here, can you just talk to me? What is the biggest challenge to getting a team to just believe in themselves, even if things are kind of starting to stack up against them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different tips I think you can try to kind of work through. I do think kind of what you mentioned, a lot of guys will go through where come out the game, you're excited, everything's going how you hope it goes. And then when something goes sideways and the next thing goes sideways and the next thing goes sideways, you see it. You see it. I see it in teams that we play all the time. And I saw it in my own teams when we've played where, it went sideways and your kids get to the point where they feel like they can't come back and they start to shut down. And so that's, I'm assuming, kind of what we're trying to work with is how do we keep our kids to not get into that. I think the biggest challenges are, when you haven't won, like when you have a culture that's, you were 0-10 or you were 1-9 or you were 2-8 or you've never beat this team. And so when things go bad, that creeps into their mindset. And that we call that like a losing culture. Like your culture is you've never won. Doesn't mean you're losers. It just means you've never had to overcome that. And the first time's always the hardest, in my opinion, to go from never done it and convince your kids, hey, we can do it. I think that's the first thing you got to do is that's a big challenge. I think you also can struggle with the support. If you're coming into a school, you can't do it by yourself as a head coach. Like there's got to be support from the admin, where they're going to give you the tools you need to try to turn this thing around, be that facilities, be that time with the kids, be that equipment, be that whatever it might be, where you have the opportunity to do the things that you want to do to try to turn around. You got to have that support. You got to figure out a way to get support for the kids. Whether that's, some of them don't have a great family life. So that's a big struggle, is getting them where they go home and there's either nothing there, or they go home and their parents, I've had them before where they've got like what I would call good parents, but they're really bad sports parents. Like they take them on vacation in the middle of the season, or the kid wants to quit, let him quit, because he's upset, instead of trying to work through things. So you got to figure out a way to get support around these kids. That's a tough challenge that a lot of guys face, whether it be no support or even worse, negative support. It's hard to defeat that. Help. If you're a coach, creating a good staff is essential. And then there's lots of different ways you can do that, but you can't do it by yourself. And a lot of places it's difficult to bring in guys that are talented, or bring in guys that want to be there, bring in guys that can actually help you. But you got to figure out a way to handle that obstacle, to get where you're not the only guy doing everything, because you can't. You physically can't do that. Talent is another challenge. You go into a place and they may not have a lot of talent, and it's very easy to make that excuse. That becomes a very easy fallback. We're playing these teams. They've got these guys. We don't have these guys. So built-in excuse for you and for the kids. That you got to overcome that obstacle. So there's all these different obstacles you got to overcome. I think the other one you got to figure out is, how do you overcome when you lose? Like, how do you get your kids to buy in when, okay, they did buy in, we went through off season, and now we're 0-3. Yeah. They did buy in, we went through off season, they're giving you all they've got, and we're 2-6. How do you continue to get them each week to come to the table ready to compete and not have it creep into their head, oh no, here it goes again. And I think those are the different challenges you kind of have to address before you can get into answers. And we're going to do answers later on, but to me, those are the things I look at of these are the biggest obstacles you've got to jump to try to create what people would call a winning culture, or a culture where kids expect to compete and they're mentally ready to handle those challenges.
It seems like every time I've changed schools to go help with a rebuild or something, it always comes down to physicality. It's always, do you have a good weight room program? Are your kids developing themselves in the off season? Are the coaches developing? Are they going to clinics? Are they studying? Or is it we're just going to do things we did last year? How can we as coaches, and we're going to talk support here in a minute, and you kind of did a little bit with the admin and stuff. How do we defeat those? I guess let's just jump on into answers, because that's like you hit all the roadblocks.
Well, one thing I want to mention Daniel to you too, and I do want to go on, but all right, so we have a guard this year, sophomore guard playing for us at quick guard, which in our offense, those guys tend to be undersized anyway. But I went in the weight room the other day, and we get after it in the weight room. You see our kids, we get after it. But he's a sophomore. He's a multi-sport kid. He was working out with less than I would work out with. So I think you can be physical. You don't necessarily have to be a weight room warrior. Like, how do you convince a kid like him, you're going to go lead up on these linebackers we're playing, that they're significantly bigger, they're significantly stronger, but we still expect you to be physical anyway. I think that's the weight room helps for sure. It's obviously easier, but we can't let that be an excuse, because at some point, no matter how much weight room work you put in, the other guy's bigger, stronger, and faster, and we're not going to back down. So I think the mindset is as important as the weight room.
I love it. Sweet. Let's move into part 2 here, Kenny, and just talking about, why do some cultures always seem to have that built-in belief? I can look around here at, you can almost put them in their own categories, right? There's the 6 or 8 teams around me that every year are going to be 8-2 or better. The 2 that they lose will probably be to another one of those types of teams who just always seem to have it together. And then there's the have-nots, and those guys always seem to be 2-8 or worse, right? And there doesn't ever appear to be, they might sneak in a 5-5 year here and there, but there's not really a changing of the guard, right? There's not that. We kind of know when the schedules come out, when the districts are made, who the district champions are, minus maybe a fluke game here and there. So what is it that creates that at a school or on a team to where those guys are continuously in the have side, and rarely do they drop off, and vice versa? The have-nots rarely jump up and do what you did, honestly, and change an entire program.
I think the easy thing to do as coaches, because I've done it, there's the same schools in Arkansas here that are always really, really talented. Like, they're really, really good. And so the easy excuse to do is, well, of course they're talented. They got the best talent. Like, of course they win all the games. They're recruiting. Or, of course, they're winning all the games. They have the best facilities. Or, of course, they're winning all the games. So, one, you got to get out of those excuses. Like, you got to get out of those excuses. If you're in the have-nots and you want to get into the haves, excuses are for losers. Winners win. And you got to figure out how to do that. And then until you can do that, you're not going to get into that other category, regardless of how much talent you might have or how little talent they might have. So when I judge a program, those teams that are always winning, it's great, but I look at, like, what about on their down year? Like, what about on the year where, and I've seen some of these teams where they don't really have a lot more talent than who they're playing, and they're still whipping them. So it's not just talent, and I think you have to make sure as a coach, you don't fall into that, or you don't look for the shortcut. Go grab a bunch of good players. Now I'll win. I'm not saying good players don't help you win. Of course they help you win. But that's not a longevity deal. Like, you're not going to win time and time and time and time again if you're having to go out and rebuild. Look at Florida State in the NCAA. Went to the semifinals and then 0-8. So it's not a pattern for winning. A pattern for winning is consistently putting it out there. So you got to, get rid of the idea of what we don't have. Like, quit whining about what you don't have. And I think I put that in the page here, Daniel, as longevity of success. Like those are the teams you look at, and here's where we want to get. How do we get there? Success doesn't always look the same. Like the teams we're talking about in Oklahoma and Arkansas, they don't always win the state championship, but they're always in contention. They're always going to have a chance to be there at the end. They're always going to have a chance to win the conference. So you're looking at, what are we going to do on years we're talented? Do we maximize that talent? If we're not talented, do we still maximize that talent? Can we get to a point where year in, year out, we're successful? I think that's where you judge yourself as a coach. I mean, if I go 10-0 and then 2-8, well, it wasn't the coach, it was the kids. But if you're going 10-0 and the next year, all right, we had a bad year at 6-4, but that group could have been 2-8, then I think you start to go, oh man, that guy's doing a good job. There's a lot of schools I look at. The team we beat Friday night, I think that guy's done a heck of a job with the group he's had. I picked them to finish 5th or 6th in the conference. We had to beat him to make him 3rd. He's done a great job.
Yeah.
I don't know. He probably ain't getting a Coach of the Year plaque for being 3rd in the conference, but as a coach, I can see that and I can recognize that. So I think that's what I look at as a coach. Are you maximizing what you have? That might be 5-5. It might be 4-6. But are you maximizing what you've got? I think big thing that we've tried to do here, and I think it's worked, is we focus on the process. Like we focus, and that's a Nick Saban quote. I know I'm stealing from him 100%, but we don't ever focus on who we're playing. Now we obviously scout them. We always put together a game plan for them,
right,
but we don't allow whether they're good or bad to affect how we prepare. Like if you come watch us prepare for a team that we got to beat, we're in the playoffs now, or if you come and watch us prepare for a team that we're probably 40-point favorites, we're going to prepare the same. Like the coaches are going to prepare the same. The kids are going to prepare the same. Then when we win, which we hope we do, or we lose, we're going to treat that the same way when we evaluate the film and look to make adjustments. One of the hardest things to do is after a big win, come in and be realistically critical of where you got to get better. Like that's hard. It's hard to get kids' attention when they won. But think about it, like Daniel's game. They lost on a walk-off field goal. So did that team that won because the kick went through the uprights necessarily do things perfect? What if it had gone to the left of the uprights? Everything's not wrong or right because of one play.
Right.
And you have to get your kids to understand that. Like we win or we lose, we got to get better. We win or we lose, we got to make adjustments. Whoever we're playing doesn't affect how you play. Like you play how you play, whether we're playing number one team in the state or we're playing a team that everyone's telling you ought to beat by 40. You do you. I think if you can ever get your kids to focus on that, focus on us, not who we're playing, you're going to have a better chance to be successful in those big high-stress situations. You're also going to have a chance to not play down to teams you shouldn't play down to. Sports happen. I mean, sports happen, guys. Reality is reality. Watching the NFL, the Dolphins just beat the Bills. Like things happen. But you don't want that to be a common occurrence. Like we want to try to limit that as much as we can by focusing on how do we get better? How do we get better regardless of win or loss? Then I think you have to have a realistic plan of how you can show your team you can win. So if you're in the, Daniel called them a have-nots group, and you're going against a have group, you're going against an opponent that's good, realistically, can you show your kids, schematic-wise, how you have a chance to win this game? And just saying play harder or play with heart or motivation, that's not it. That's not it. Can we show them defensively, here's what we think we can do to them to limit them? Can we show our guy offensively, here's how we can beat this team because we're going to use their technique against them? Kids aren't dumb. They can turn film on and go, my goodness, they're good. That's easy to do. So you got to be able to break it down and say, here's how our scheme can take advantage of this. Here's how our scheme can give you a chance to win. Here's how your technique can give you a chance to be successful. We're not asking you to all of a sudden become an all-state player. We're asking you to do X, Y, or Z. It might be, you're at corner. We know you can't cover this guy. Can you take these 3 routes away and we'll give you help on the rest of them? You're a D lineman and you're going against a stud here. We're not asking you to run into him because that would just be suicide. Can you use your quickness? Can you sacrifice your body and grab 2 of them so our linebacker can make a play? What is your scheme against a superior opponent? Do you have a realistic plan of how you can win? Because kids, they know that. And if you go into games where you're not giving them an opportunity schematic-wise, you're failing them. And so I think even the years we weren't great, we tried to go in with a plan of how we could win. I think you have to have a coaching staff that understands your scheme so well, they can make adjustments in game. You can't do that with a new scheme. It's got to be something you've run a lot, inside and outside. You can look at the film and go, oh, here's what we're going to do. And it's already built in. It can't be hey, we're going to add this, right before on a timeout. That's probably, you might get lucky once, but that's probably not going to be long-term success. But if you've had a scheme that has built-in things that you can go to, hey, remember, guys, we ran this 2 weeks ago. Do you remember that? You're doing this. So we're just going to switch your responsibilities. Nice, easy fix. Do you have the ability to make adjustments, or is your adjustment holler at the kids and say, play harder? That ain't going to work. There's times, guys, I've got to get on our kids to play hard. I'm not saying you don't have to do that. But if that's your only adjustment, kids will not look to you with respect because you're not really giving them a tool. My dads, you want me to play harder up in the bleachers.
That's right.
So are all the fans. What are you giving me as a tool that can actually help me be successful? I think scheme does matter. I know we talk about culture over scheme, and I agree with that. However, scheme does matter more than people want it to matter. You got to be good at what you're doing.
For sure. When I look at those teams that are always at the top, I think kind of really just piggybacking on all the things I use piggybacking on Veterans Day. So for all you veterans out there listening, there you go. I got you. Just piggyback on that. They do always seem to have the answers, right? And and I know we look at talent a lot. And yes, those teams now in the transfer portal era, those teams are going to accumulate more. The rich are going to get richer for a while, right? There is some more parity in college football because of the financial side. But in high school, we don't have that financial side. So it's going to be the wins. It's going to be the coaches. Really ties back into last week's episode when we talked about keeping your staff together. Now more than ever, it might be more important to have guys on staff that have those answers, like you just said, Kenny, the ones that can look for their position group and say, oh, we're failing here. This was the answer we used before. And if you're constantly rotating coaches, you're constantly rotating admin or teachers or whatever in your program that's getting revolving door, you might need to put a stop to that to help build that continuity and that longevity, right? So having the coaches there to lead that from the front, because the kids get 4 years. Don't matter if they're a walk-on starter as a freshman, you still only get them for 4 years. So, coaches is one thing you can control and keep around and keep that scheme, keep that ideology. About screwed that word up. In your locker room, right? So the guys know they can go out and trust these coaches, go out and trust this plan. I have a question here. It is completely off topic, kind of. When we talk about keeping those coaches and the scheme that works and making our kids believe, how much change are you allowing? You're a head coach that has your own offensive system. So how much change are you allowing those coaches to make to answer questions? Is there anything there that they're limited to? Or is it, hey, let's just go out and be successful, whatever it takes?
I think a lot of it, for me, is how much trust you have in your staff. I think I'm at the point now where my defense coordinator's been with me for, probably 7 years. And so if he wants to put in a blitz this week to practice and play around with, or a coverage adjustment, I'm not going to blink. 5 years ago when he was new, we're going to have a long conversation before we putting something in, and we're going to, what is our philosophy? Are we following our philosophy on that? Same thing on offense. Like, I'm at a point now where if I want to call timeout and put some trick play in on that sideline, I can do that, but we've worked a long time to get to that point where we hopefully don't have to. I do want to mention one other thing kind of going on with what you said, Daniel, was sometimes as a head coach too, you got to get rid of the weeds. Like you have to weed the flower bed a little bit, and that's really hard for guys that are relational. Like I feel like I'm a pretty relational guy with our kids, so it's really hard for me to get rid of a kid or get rid of a coach. Like I don't enjoy that. That's not why I got into this business. I don't really like that. But I had a coach a long time ago, right around the time we were finally starting to get good. So we were 0-10, and then we were down to 4-6. And before we made that jump to where we basically made the playoffs every year, we'd gone from really bad to just kind of bad. And we're trying to get to good. He said, it was actually one of my coaches. Said, Coach, we were talking about 3 or 4 kids that I probably needed to get rid of because they had done enough where it was time, and he said, Coach, I know you're having a hard time doing this, but I want you to think of it from my perspective. I've got a son I'm about to send you in your program, and I don't want my son around those kids. Do you want our good kids not to want to be around kids on your team? And it was like, man, that's tough. So as a head coach, that's the weight you have to carry. You don't need guys in your program that are going to discourage good kids from coming to your program regardless of how talented they are, and that's tough. That's really tough because, one, you don't ever want to put a kid off because you don't know their situation. And 2, it's really hard to put one off that's really good. Yeah. Right? Those are things you got to think about.
Yep. That's a good point. And as you get more successful, I feel like you got it's a little more okay, right? You probably got another kid coming around versus if you're starting over, man, it's hard to do that. But
you hope you're getting these kids young enough where they become part of your culture, where you don't have as many of those issues.
Yeah. I want to touch one more time on the part where you said a realistic plan, a scheme that's realistically you can pull off. Look, I mean, we can all watch football on Saturdays and Sundays and try to trickle things down and pull from our coordinator that we love the most, whether you're maybe you're a Lincoln Riley guy or a Schottenheimer guy, or maybe you're watching Saban's defenses or whoever it is you're watching. You can always try to pull from that and put in, but you got to be realistic with, if you're going to run Nick Saban's defense, do you have a bunch of 5-star talent that's on defense, or are you trying to make kids that can't really pull off these things do it? And I think you're going to find that you'll just be disappointed more times than not. And so having a realistic plan, I think, is big time. Scheme can be really neat, and you can draw up a lot of answers. You can have a lot of fun stuff. But if you start watching your kids screw up, they start making mistakes. Your tackle's down blocking when he's supposed to reach block, and your puller forgets to pull or pulls the wrong way, or your quarterback's turning the wrong direction. You'll start seeing these little things because you're just doing a little too much. I think that's where you have to go back and estimate or evaluate how realistic is our game plan. Can our kids pull that off? That doesn't mean you can't try to push the boundaries. I think you should. We at our school, we have a why not mentality. Why not do that? What is it? Is it the new ninja formation? Is it tackle over unbalanced? Is it tackle guard over unbalanced? Are we running outside zone with nothing but a tight end on that side of the center? What are we doing? And why not go do that? But we also have to keep it realistic, and it needs to make sense, right? You need to understand it better give you an advantage. You better not just be running stuff just to run stuff. So a realistic plan your kids can actually pull off that also gives you an advantage. Otherwise, you might just be spinning your wheels and wasting your time with those kids in their younger years.
I think the other part about the scheme too is an identity. Like, who are you? You can win a lot of ways. I'm not advocating one way or the other. Everyone knows what I run, but I've seen guys who have gone into a school and they put in the spread, up tempo, get after it, score a bunch of points, had a lot of success. Seen guys go into a school and say, all right, we're going to be good on defense, we're going to control the clock, we're going to run the ball. They've been successful.
Yep.
The bottom line is an identity that matches your kids. I think that's important.
That's awesome. Yeah, identity is definitely where it's at. Stay true to yourself, right? All right, let's get to the last part here, Coach, and that's how to be intentional or become intentional with your team. So talk to me about how coaches can do that to kind of aid themselves and everything else we've talked about today.
Yeah, I think one, you either have to have experience in what needs to be done or bring someone in that has experience with what needs to be done. So if you're a young coach now and you're taking over some program and you don't know, and that's okay to admit that you don't know. Go find an old veteran that can come in and help you, or go find a mentor. Doesn't even have to be on your staff. Go find somebody who's been there and done that, who can give you some different tips. Say, here's what I've done before. Here's what I'm seeing with your program. Here's some things you can do. Kind of a sounding board guy, maybe, that you can show problems to, and he can help you problem solve those things. Because experience doesn't just happen. Like you have to go through it. So that's not a great fun answer for a young coach to hear, but experience matters a lot of times in those deals. I think placing the focus on the players and their responsibility and not letting a scoreboard affect that. And that's easier said than done. This year we went 9-1, and I had to really practice that on the one, because the kids are naturally way different after a loss than they are a win.
Yeah.
So as a coach, you have to be the same. Like it bothers me. I was sick for a week. We haven't lost in a long time. Sick for a long time. However, I can't just lose my mind and, be a completely different person after we lost the game as opposed to when we won a game. Or I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. Because I'm telling these kids, win or lose, we're going to try to get better. And win or lose, we care for you the same. And if you don't do that, then all of a sudden you're now placing all your emphasis on winning and not any emphasis on growing your players. I think really good teams celebrate and they win and they have a good time. But you don't really see a difference on Monday when they come in. If they lost or they won, same. It's the same mentality. I think you got to try to take emotion out of whatever you're doing as much as possible. Like, it's easy to get kids fired up, go play a game. It's pretty easy. I think it's easy to, be fired up on Friday, or it's easy to fly off the handle when your emotions run hot. And the emotions are going to, it's an emotional game. But as a head coach, you need to try to remove yourself as much as possible from that emotion. You're never going to be all the way out of it. But try not to make hasty decisions, especially with people, with emotion. Push off making decisions till at least a day or so, like big decisions, till at least a day or so, and everybody's had a chance to kind of cool down. That might mean sending a kid to the locker room. You're not kicking them off the team so you can visit and talk about different things. That might mean whatever it is, but you try to take emotion out of big decisions. That's really difficult calling plays. And I think you have to do the same thing there. Like, emotion plays a role, and you have to have a feel for the game. But most of the time when I've struggled as a play caller, offense or defense, or as a head coach, decisions being made, I've made decisions based off of emotion. I know we can get this. We're going to run this. We're going to block better on this time. How about use some logic here and go, they got 6 dudes on the right. We don't need to run that play. We need to run a different play. Or they're overloading the inside. We don't need to run that play. We need to run a different play. Or defensively, I know we can make a stop on 4th down. Well, what does your call sheet that you've worked on all week tell you to do? Like, Don't just call a blitz because you feel it. What does your call sheet tell you he's done all year? Use that. I know we could go for it and get it right here, but we're up 17 in the 4th quarter. Maybe it's better to just punt this and play the odds. Those are the things you've got to be able to do as a head coach or a play caller in the heat of the game, is try to take emotion out of it and make logical decisions. I think that's hard to do. I think Final thing I'll say here is I think you need to be the best you can be at whatever scheme you have chosen. Be a master of your scheme and your craft. Whether that's 3-4 defense, 4-2 defense, 3-3-5 defense, whatever, 3 safety defense, whatever it is, be a master at that so you can make adjustments. Offensively, flex bone, air raid, gun tee, wing tee, option. Be a master of what you're trying to accomplish to give your kids the best chance to succeed. And if it's not you, hire a guy who's a master at what he does so he can help your kids win.
That may be the best point out of all of those. I know emotionally, look, if I wanted someone that's going to go for it every single time on fourth down, I'd hire a mom out of the stands because that's what they all want, right? Go for it. We got it this time, coach. We're at our own 20. Like, we probably don't need to go for this. So yeah, that's big, and I feel like logically it makes sense to just do the thing that a lot of other people are doing. Punt the ball when you need to, field goal when you need to. I have to admit, there's some nights on Friday that I'm on the sideline going, I think we should have went for that when we're punting, or
Right.
Thank God we're punting, because I don't think we would have gotten it, right? Like, we have that a little bit of difference that we would have done things, but it's not our call, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. So emotionally, we get carried away, right? You mentioned it there. But being the best you can at whatever scheme you've chosen to run, the coaches you've decided to hire, the kids you've decided to play, you have to be the best you can be at like you said, Kenny, giving them the opportunity, the chance to win. After my first year, when I was absolutely useless as a coach and realized it, I immediately jumped in and I went and found a way to learn more football. And it cost me some money. I had to invest in myself and my football knowledge and my X's and O's and all that, because I just simply didn't know anything. And I felt like I was wasting kids' year of football. If you send out a senior class and they lose a bunch of games or have a poor year, and it's because you would not invest in yourself to be a better coach, I think that's the worst thing you can do. That is being a steward, a bad steward of the profession, is how I would put that in military terms. That's something I think is irresponsible and can't be forgiven. You have one job to do, and that's go out and get better at what you're doing. Yes, it's nice to win 10 games in a season, or at least Kenny tells me. I've never been 10-0, and it sucks to lose them all. I know that because we've lost a bunch. But going out and not being the best you can be to help those kids be whatever their ceiling is, reach it and try to break it, I think is just unforgivable. You have to go out and do that for yourself. And as you do that, as you said, Coach, being intentional about that, I think you'll watch your success come around. You can have more time at a job. You may win 5-5 3 or 4 years in a row, but people understand a ceiling, right? They understand there's a ceiling on a team. Talent sometimes is the bottleneck. Sometimes it's, hey, we can't get another coach hired. But if you continuously are doing more with less, I think the favors will start falling for you. And now you can go out and hire one of these coaches that knows what to do to get better. Or a kid transfers in because, hey, we've seen them doing the right thing over there. That new bond comes, and now all of a sudden you've got a new stadium or a new weight room, or you got turf or whatever you want, right? Those things happen when they watch people do more with less consistently, because they're going out and being a good steward of their profession. So being intentional with your team, I think, is a great place to start that turnaround, just being the best you can be. I think we checked all the boxes there, Coach. I know that we've got one little situation of the week here, and it is kind of just talking about keeping kids in that mindset of belief when the things are kind of on the line. So we'll go through the situation week here. Fourth quarter, 8 minutes left. The opposing team just scored to go up 15. It's been back and forth all night. Little monkey wrench here. You have a freshman wide receiver who you've not really used before, and he's having a standout night. I mean, he's really broke out tonight. Whatever it is that he's got, they can't stop it. And your primary back, who you've leaned on all season long, has been kind of the dude is just not shining. So whether it be game plan or something internal, whatever, he's just not having the night he generally does. 3-part question. What is your message to the kids? What does your communication look like going in with your play callers? And how do you go about handling that situation overall?
I'm assuming you're talking about like replacing one for the other. That's what I'm going to I don't know if you mean that or not, but that's how I would read kind of what you're asking that question. Like, do you replace the?
They're both on the field, but I guess more than anything, just generally the answer is put the ball in the playmaker's hands, the one you can trust, who's done it all year. Now he's not working, and this other kid is for some reason. So
yeah, I mean, for us, we run what's working in the game. So the rest that's not going to be we don't think it's a bad kid, and I think we're going to run what's working. And I think down 15, you ain't got a lot of time anyway, so you better go to what's got you there. I think for the main thing on those situations is making sure your kids understand a time down situation. Like, we're going to have to move quickly. I'm going to go to what works. To me, I don't even think that's a hard question. It'd be harder if I had to bench one of them, but we're going to go with what works and try to get down the field. And, Monday we'll deal with why whatever we were trying to do earlier, it isn't working, but we got to try to win this game. I think our kids understand the goal is to win and be successful as a team. I hope you've built that culture. But 8 minutes to go, you don't have time to fool around at that point. It's not like you can go back and scheme stuff up, and you got to move because you're going to score twice. I think big thing, keep that kid involved if you can, and just let them, hey, no, we're gonna we got to throw the ball right here. We may use you as play fake. We may get you the ball a little bit here, but we're going to play the hot hand, and that's not a question. We had that happen, I think, a couple nights ago. Where we've got a super, super talented quarterback here. Well, I think is phenomenal. Best one we've ever had come through here. But we threw it 5 times because we scored 47 points. It wasn't a knock to him. This was the hot hand, where week before, I think he'd thrown it 20 times. And this coming up week, he may throw it 20 more times. It's one of those deals where he's a dude for us. But the hot hand was someone else, and it's not a knock on the kid. It's we're going to do whatever it takes to be successful to win this game right now.
I love it. Is there anything special you're talking to your coaches here as you're communicating with them over the headset about how we need to handle any of the situation? Have y'all practiced this situation enough? Hey, we got to get the stop, keep the clock from rolling while we do get going, right?
Yeah, no, fortunately we especially early in the season, we haven't done it as much recently, probably need to, but we always will work some kind of 2-minute drill. We're always working some situation, especially early in the year. We'll work where we got to score, get the onside kick. We also work the other end of it where they score. We got to recover the onside kick. How do we play defense in that situation? So, we've worked those situations a lot. Probably use a good refresher here before the playoffs. But if you've practiced that situation, your kids should be comfortable with it. So there shouldn't need to be a ton of communication going on there. But I always do have it. It's usually me. Or I will delegate to another coach of how many timeouts do we have? We're going for 2 here. What's our game plan in these types of situations?
Yep, love it. All right, man. Well, Coach, I think that pretty much does it for the day. Thank you once again for Ace Sports, Martin Bridges. If you haven't reached out to him, martin.bridges@acesports.com. Please do that. Get at least a mock-up of what a board could look like for you. Get with some coaches that have it. I think Mark can hook you up with some of those guys and just talk finances and what it can actually do for your program, especially now as some of our seasons have come to an end. Some of us are still playing, but maybe you're not going to be back at home anymore, so they can kind of get in and look at it, and you got a little bit of extra time there. Yeah, man. Let's see. Social media. I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com and check out the YouTube. Just look at Chamberlain Football Consulting on YouTube. You should find me. Kenny is at FB Coach Simpson everywhere. And then check out his YouTube and, of course, fbcoachsimpson.com. Go over and jump into the Gun T program. This is a great time as you get ready for that big reset, especially if you couldn't move the ball much this year. If you struggled on offense, I think it's a great place to go to get an idea of how to have answers. We talked earlier, you got to have answers to all these different problems. The Gun T system is great for that, having answers for everything. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter/X. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.